How raging is this? It is hard dating online, everything else. And then it turns out the person who you're chatting to, turns out they're not really who they said they were.
So this is the term catfish. It's been around for over a decade now. It was that MTV show that started in America. It's in the UK. There's Catfish UK now. And it's all like, what's it all about? It has been around for a while. So let's take a look at where the term comes from. This is Catfish, the show.
They used to tank cod from Alaska all the way to China. They'd keep them in vats in the ship. By the time the codfish reached China, the flesh was mush and tasteless. So this guy came up with the idea that if you put these cods in these big vats, put some catfish in with them, and the catfish will keep the cod agile. And there are those people who are catfish in life, and they keep you on your toes. They keep you guessing, they keep you thinking, they keep you fresh.
I'm sure if there's people who watch it, they're now going, well, that's not true, because that's now been found to be a myth. That's probably not where the term catfishing came from. But that doesn't matter, because we've all heard of it recently, because the two Johnnies were joined by cyber psychologist Nicola Fox Hamilton. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think we've talked about catfishing a few times, but the two Johnnies have had the GAA catfish. It's absolutely everywhere because of this podcast. So catfishing is someone setting up fake profiles.
Yeah, so it's usually defined as someone setting up a complex fake profile, often to trick someone into like a romantic relationship or love, but not always. And it's one of those things that's quite ambiguous. Like, a lot of people will say, I was catfished in online dating, when they mean that someone put an old photograph or a Photoshop photograph. And that's not necessarily what catfishing is. It's about creating a totally separate identity.
Okay, so because I have a friend who would be on those profiles, whatever else, but the picture he used was like from a holiday we had over a decade ago. So whenever he turns up and meets a girl,
that's just stretching the truth.
So that's not catfishing.
That's not really catfishing. Actually,
that's deception.
One
maybe,
researcher
is it?
has called it kitten fishing, which is kind of cute. So it's embellishment, exaggeration. It's not quite honest, but it's also, you're not an entirely different person.
So catfish is when it's an entirely different person.
Yeah.
So then obviously, is this something that we're seeing is growing a lot?
Yeah, I think the internet certainly facilitates it. It makes it easier. It's easier for all of us to present a slightly better version of ourselves online, because we're not face-to-face with somebody, because we can be anonymous. But it certainly makes it easier for people to pretend to be somebody that they're not as well.
But this, this isn't new. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, like, it has been throughout time that people have pretended to be other people for fraudulent reasons.
Yeah.
Now, is the idea behind catfish, is it that they want to get money from you, or is there a psychological reason that they're doing this? They're trying to get something for themselves that isn't monetary.
A lot of reasons. So one of them is financial, and that typically comes more under romance scams, which is kind of catfishing. Someone who sets up a complex identity to scam you out of money.
Is that like the Tinder swindler?
That's sort of like the Tinder swindler, except you would never meet a typical romance scammer. So they might be based in West Africa or somewhere else, and they will never want to meet you. But they will carry on a relationship for quite a long time, groom you until they ask for money, and then they'll ask for more money and more money. So that's one kind of catfisher, but it's specifically designed to scam people through making them fall in love. The other kind of catfisher, where they're not actually looking for financial gain, they might be looking for something else. They might be looking for you to send nudes or videos. Or they might just be looking to explore an aspect of themselves, an aspect of their personality that they can't offline. If you look at Catfish, the TV show, this is one of those areas where there's actually not that much research, because trying to find catfishers to talk to do research on, people don't really come forward.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we know is through Catfish, the TV show, which of course is curated. But you see people wanting to explore an aspect of their identity that they can't offline. So they might be gay or lesbian. They might be exploring their gender. And they do that online in a way that's safe for them. So they might live somewhere where they're not accepted, or where they're really shunned by their community. And this gives them a chance to explore that. Now, the person on the other end of it suffers because they think they're talking to somebody else. But for this person, it's a chance for them to actually explore who they are, maybe boost their confidence a little bit. There's others who just find it thrilling, who want to exert some control in their lives because they've had things happen. So they might have experienced death or loss or job loss or divorce, and they're trying to exert some control and manage their life to a degree.
I had someone set up a fake profile of me, like it's happened a few times, but there's some, but then I didn't really know anything about it, but then I would get a message from somebody asking, on my profile, asking, is this you? And I said no, and then they said, like, to be heartbroken, they'd be saying, like, we've shared so many things with each other, stories, pictures, things like this.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
It's awful, yeah.
Does that leave you with a sense of guilt then, to be like, no, it's not your fault. No, you know it's not your fault, but you're sitting there going, I'm sorry, I've never spoken to you before in my entire life.
No, but
I don't know who you are.
One person in particular, you could tell how distraught they were over this. So, like, it's a real psychological. I mean, like the effects this is having on people, and we're even seeing with the podcast with the two Johnnies. You know, the level of detail, how long they were chatting to each other. I mean, it could be quite impactful.
It really can, and people can experience really significant mental health difficulties after it, even PTSD in extreme cases. When you look at something like romance scams, which we know a lot more about and a lot more about the victims of it, there's a double sort of effect on them. So they might have lost money, but they also have lost what they consider to be the best relationship of their life, because it was someone who really listened to them. They're often love bombed by the scammer or by the catfisher.
And love bombing means?
It's basically at the very start of a relationship, if someone is overwhelmingly lovely, so many compliments, so much time spent, it's really intense, they tell you they love you very quickly, they might even ask you to marry them very quickly. And a lot of abusers do that. And of course, you know, romance scams are an abusive process. So that is something to really look out for. You know, a profile that's too good to be true, someone that love bombs you, someone that doesn't want to meet in person, that can't FaceTime for some reason, you know, their phone's always broken or something's wrong. Huge red flags to look out for catfishing and romance scams.
And there's another podcast called Sweet Bobby that was out last year in the UK where something happens. I'm not going to give it away for anyone who wants to listen to it, but you know, something happens over a decade and you can see someone's life utterly being destroyed, being secluded, isolated from friends, giving up almost everything. And an awful lot of us sit here going, oh, for God's sake, how could you, like, you look at the two Johnnies, you're going, well, they're not going to really fall for something like that. You know, they've got a big support network, they've got a podcast, they can chat about it. But there are people that this does happen to. And then when they find out, they're even more isolated, I would assume, from their friends and family because they feel foolish.
Yes, there's that. And often the scammer or the catfisher will have isolated them from their family as well, because families will often express concern about you spending so much time talking to someone that you don't know. And so they'll say it's us against them and they'll isolate them from them. So it's hugely problematic. It really can be.
What about if somebody's profile and their pictures are being used by the catfish, but it's not actually them? Is there anything that they can do to try and stop that being used?
I mean, it is, you know, unlawful use of their image, but if it's being used for fraud or something like that, then potentially. But if someone's just using their images, it's very difficult to do anything about that.
All you can do is report it and say that they're, like, that's it.
Not me.
That's not me. Like, they're taking my photo and that's not my account. Like, that's all you can do.
And a lot of the people whose images are used, so catfishers will often pick somebody's social media account and every image they post, they will replicate on the catfishing account. So it looks like they have a full life. But it can be quite traumatic for the person whose images are taken because, like you, someone will call out to them on the street who thinks they have a relationship with them and then get very upset or maybe even angry because they think that they're pretending that they're not having a relationship when they are. And so there's a lot of victims in it that aren't necessarily just the victim that was catfished as well.
And if you did, say you mentioned about sending pictures and you're being conned into sending these pictures, like, is there something, like, if you find out who this is not, you find out who this catfish was, can the police, can the guards be charged for that? I mean, where does that go?
The laws haven't quite caught up. If they've shared your images without your consent, yes.
Okay.
And it's possible that it could because the images were given without your full consent. You thought you were giving them to one person and you were actually giving them to someone else. And so
but it's a grey area.
It could fall under Coco's law. So, you know, there was a solicitor writing about this, and it hasn't been tested yet, but it could fall under Coco's law.
But more, we saw during COVID, and these are figures that we have from the UK, the romance scams are worth over €100 million. They've increased exponentially hugely during lockdown. We don't have the exact figures for Ireland, but it is thought it's gone up hundreds of percent, romance scams. And they are things that we have to look out for.
Because one of the biggest red flags and things that I would always tell someone to look out for is someone who won't meet in person. And with the lockdowns, you couldn't meet in person. So someone who wouldn't meet in person was actually a green flag during COVID, but it made it very difficult for people to spot it.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID really, I mean, it increased this, didn't it? It accelerated massively. Listen, thank you very much, Dr. Nicola Fox-Hamilton, cyber psychologist. Really interesting. And again, we'd love to hear from people at home. 0896 111 111. Is this something that you've experienced?
He's not worth it, lads, if you're getting messages from him. It's no crack.
Stay away.
It's no crack whatsoever.
How boring.
No.
Or if you are messaging that other profile and they're good,
what's that?
And they're good crack, well, you know,
send him an ear and see what happens. I'm joking. We know this isn't a joke. We're sorry.